On Earth RP1, people of the same gender repels each other. Fathers could only hold their daughters, and mothers could only hold their sons. Anne was 10 years old. By then, most children had learned that some distances were permanent. Anne understood that. She simply refused to accept it. Anne had been warned that the chair would not move any closer to Moline, her closest friend. Physics did not update overnight, Moline told her. Anne pulled anyway, and the chair threw her to the floor in front of the whole class. Sit where the room permits you to sit, the teacher said. Rooms don't permit things. People arrange them. Anne didn't think of it as rebellion. Rebellion requires believing someone has authority over you. Anne thought of it as research. At home, it was Thomas, the family's longtime caregiver, who tended her scrapes, the arms her mother's love had to borrow. That evening, Anne finally asked the question she'd been circling for years. Not why the world kept her and her mother apart, but why her mother had stopped trying to close the gap herself. Trying, her mother said, doesn't always change the answer. Anne wasn't disappointed. She just felt that someone had been asking the wrong question. In the months that followed, she tried everything: gloves, cardboard, pillows, distance, surprise. She learned the barrier recognized only similarity. It always arrived first. Late one night, hunched over sketches of two hands and the gap between them, her mother told her the world was not a machine, waiting for someone to find its loose screw. Anne only asked how she could be so sure. If trying alone hadn't worked, Anne reasoned, the problem needed outside force. She was 13 now. One of her friend pushed her toward Moline as hard as he could, and the barrier threw her backward into him instead. The class laughed. Good news, Moline called out. Pushing also doesn't work. The barrier could not be surprised. It could not be rushed, and apparently it could not be bullied. So she tried pulling, this time from both sides. She tied a rope around her waist. Moline tied the other end around hers, and they pulled toward each other with everything they had. For a moment, it seemed to work. Then the barrier pushed back harder, and the rope snapped, throwing them both to the ground. We somehow survived, Moline said. They both laughed it off. Moline thought the world might simply be stronger than them. Anne disagreed. It isn't stronger, she said. It only knows one answer. Then, what's the right question? I don't know yet, but for the first time, she was certain there was one. That night, her mother told her she could have broken her neck. Anne didn't deny it. She said it needed solving, not denying. Her mother had no answer. She left the room. That was when Anne noticed the old key hanging from Thomas's pocket. What does that open? Thomas looked toward the hallway where her mother had gone. Something your mother was not ready to show you. That night, Thomas finally unlocked the old cupboard that had remained closed for years. Inside, there was a photograph, a feeding bottle, and an old video recorder. Anne picked up the photograph. Is this Dad? Her mother only nodded. Instead of answering, Thomas played the recording. It was a hospital room. The moment Anne took her first breath, her mother reached for her, but the barrier answered first, and the baby had to be carried by a nurse instead. The tiny hand tried to reach, but the barrier kept them apart. Again, from that day on, someone else took care of Anne, while her mother watched from the other side. The recording stopped. For a long moment, no one spoke. Anne looked at her mother. So, nobody in the family ever held me? The room fell silent. Looking at the feeding bottle, her mother quietly said no for the first time in her life and understood why she had spent her entire life trying to touch people. Because the very first person she had ever reached for was a mother, and the very first answer the world had ever given her was distance. Years passed. Anne's first idea was to defeat the barrier. Her second was to understand it. Neither came easily. She built a crude glow first, wired to spark on contact. Did you feel my presence? Moline asked after it shocked her. I felt death. That's progress. Pressure alone wasn't the answer. A wall could produce force. She needed something that could tell her who stood on the other side. Anne was never the smartest student in the room. She failed far more than she succeeded. What she had instead was harder to name. She could return to the same unanswered question long after everyone else had walked away. Years later, wearing a refined prototype, she and Molin raised their hands. The barrier appeared, just as it always had. But this time, something crossed first: warmth, then pressure, then a rhythm. Molin's heartbeat pressed gently into Anne's palm. What do you feel? Your pulse. Does it feel like me? Anne smiled. Yes. Anne brought the finished device to her mother. They raised their hands. Warmth crossed first. You are warmer than I imagined, Anne said. Her mother smiled. Then something else crossed the barrier: emotion. For the first time, they were crying together. Then, is it enough? Mara asked. Anne smiled. It begins here. Months later, Anne rested hand over her pregnant belly. A boy? Her mother asked. A girl. Joy crossed Mara's face. Then, fear. I'm sorry, she whispered, for being afraid before she is even born. Anne reached toward her. She won't grow up wondering whether her mother was ever really there. Anne had spent her childhood imagining what family touch might feel like. Now, exhausted after childbirth, she watched her husband Elias hold their newborn daughter first, the one embrace the world still permitted. A small sensor was fastened around the newborn's wrist and wore the paired device. The device had been built for this moment. When Anne reached toward her daughter, the barrier answered, exactly as it always had. Behind her, Mara flinched. She had seen this moment before. For one bearable second, nothing happened. And Elias whispered. Then warmth, a pulse. What do you feel? Her fingers. Anne whispered. She is moving. She raised one hand toward her mother. For one long moment, she felt her mother's warmth in one hand and her daughter's in the other. 3 generations, the same distance, no longer empty. Is she warm? Just like you. Once, Anne had reached for a mother's hand and found only distance. Now, her own daughter reached for hers. This time, every movement was answered. Anne never broke the law of Earth RP1. She did something the law had never prepared for. She taught love how to cross without touching it. Welcome to the Maya simulation.